looking at lesson 4-2 part 1. We're going to be looking at how to come up with the slope-intercept form from a graph. So we talked about the slope-intercept form last week and how the y is equal to mx plus b is the slope-intercept form that we use typically for non-proportional relationships. And this b was new, if you recall, was the y-intercept that we talked about last week, where the line crosses the y-axis. And of course m, which hopefully you guys all can recognize, is the slope, okay, which we're going to be looking at rise over run in here with the slope, because we're identifying the equation through a graph. So the first equation or graph that we see here is going through the origin, and the other point is going through 0.35. So do you want to write this down and draw this graph, 0.35 and the origin? And we know that from what we know about proportional relationships, that this is a proportional relationship because it goes through the origin. We can use the slope-intercept form in proportional relationships as well as non-proportional ones. So the way it works is, first we need to identify two things. One is the slope and one is the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. This is the y-axis, so where does the line cross the y-axis? It crosses it at 0. So we just put 0. I know that it crosses at 0, 0, but what you do is you just write whatever the y value is for the ordered pair as your y-intercept. Okay, in this case they're both the same. The next thing we want to do is find the slope. We can do it one of two ways. One is that we can just write, this is 5 over 3 because we can use k for the slope here. The other way, of course, is by going and doing a rise over run. And let's just practice that a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're rising 5, going up 5. And then 1, 2, 3, we're running 3. So rise over run is 5 over 3. And so the next step that we want to do is put it into the formula. The formula is, our equation rather, is y is equal to m times x plus b. So mx means m times x. And just be careful with that part. And so what you know now is what m is and you know what b is. And you just substitute those two numbers in for m and b. So we're going to substitute, go ahead and do that. Y is equal to, instead of m, we're going to write 5 over 3. And then we're putting our x times x plus b. Instead of b, we're writing 0. So that might be a good idea to kind of separate this. I just want to use a different color here. Separate this area from this to just kind of know that here we're dealing with our equation. Now, when you have a y-intercept of 0, you don't write plus 0 in your final equation. It just doesn't look good. So don't worry about writing that. And our final answer, nice and cleaned up, is y is equal to 5 over 3x. So we don't write times x, we'll just write x, and that's it. And you'll be able to recognize this, hopefully, because we did this in the past with kx. Y is equal to kx. It's the same thing, except you could use slope-intercept form for proportional and non-proportional relationships. Okay, so let's look at a non-proportional relationship where the line does not cross the y-axis, or the origin, sorry. It does cross the y-axis. It has this. So once again, we're going to do the same process. We're going to find the slope and we're going to find the y-intercept, okay? The y-intercept is where our line crosses the y-axis. Where is that point? That point is here at 2. So I'm going to give you some time to draw this line out. The line is going upward. It is going through 2 on the y-axis. And the other point that it goes through is 3, 3. And then you can even do, if you want, negative 3, 1 as well here, if you like. 3. That's another point. This point here is 0, 2. Okay. It is important to recognize that the y-intercept, when you are looking at a y-intercept, the ordered pair for that will always have 0 as its x-axis. So whenever x is 0, the y is your y-intercept, which is b. So here we're going to just put b is 2 here because x is 0, right? And of course we can see that our line is crossing the y-axis at this point 2. And our slope here will just start at the y-intercept and go up 1. Just draw it in 1. And that's our rise. And 1, 2, 3, and that's our run. And of course we know that our slope is positive here. So rise over run is 1 over 3. Oops. 1 over 3. And there you have it. Now we're going to go ahead and substitute this equation. Y is equal to mx plus b. Remember, m is being multiplied by x. So y is equal to, my slope here is, just write it in a different color for you, 1 over bit of a reboot situation here. Hopefully it didn't affect the lesson too much. 1/3 is the slope, and x, you just write in x, plus b, which is 2, right? And that's where this is coming from. The 2 is here, and the 1/3 is the slope. Right there. Okay? Very good. Just clean this up a little bit. Make it look nicer for you. There you go. So, notice that my final answer, of course I just put different colors just so you could recognize that this is the slope and this is the y-intercept, and everything has to be like in the right order. Make sure you put in your x right next to your slope, multiply your slope by your x, and then the y-intercept is the constant at the end. So that's where the line crosses the y-axis, and in this case it crosses the y-axis at 2. So pretty much what you need is your slope and your y-intercept, and you're good to go for slope-intercept equations. Number 3, go ahead and draw this graph out. It crosses the y-axis at 3 once again here, and the line is going downward this time, so be careful. It does cross another point here is at 1, 2. Of course this point here is at 0, 3. You've got this point here at -1, 4. It's right here. And you could just be okay with these 3 points. So come up with what the slope here is and what the y-intercept for this graph is. And we'll come back to the video after you guys find the answers yourself. Okay, so with this I went ahead and did my rise over run. I'm dropping 1 and going to the right one. So notice that this slope is negative, and we know that the line is going downward looking from left to right. and that will give me a -1 as my slope. The y-intercept, as we could see, this point was 0, 3, and we talked about how if whenever x is 0, that y is your y-intercept. So 3 is your b, which is the y-intercept. We're going to put that -1 and 3 into the equation for m and b. And I want you to recognize that whenever you have a slope that's -1, or even if you have a slope that's 1, I'll show you an example of that, you can kind of have a nice clean answer as, instead of writing -1, you could just write -x. That means the same thing as -1 times x plus 3. So your final answer should look like -x plus 3, just like that. And that's the same thing as -1 times x. So recognize that -1x is the same thing as -x, and also recognize that 1 times x is the same thing as x. So these two things are important to know, especially when you are trying to identify the slope in an equation, and that you've got an x by itself. Then you will be able to recognize that, in fact, this is the slope. 1 would be the slope. Or if you have -x in your equation, then you would know that -1 is your slope. So in this case, we could see that happening as well. Very good. So let's go ahead and try out 2 more problems on your own. This one has the y-intercept is at -3. Might not be able to see that -3 very well just because I put a little dot there for you. So go ahead and draw this graph. That's -3 right there. This other point would be 2, -4. This is, of course, 0, -3. Because remember, where the line crosses the y-axis, your x value will always be 0. X value will always be 0. And this point here is at -2, -2. Okay. And go ahead and identify the slope-intercept form of this equation, or this graph. So y is equal to mx plus b. Once again, you need the slope and you need the y-intercept, m and b. And see what you come up with. This time, not only do we want you to identify the slope and the y-intercept, but also go ahead and solve it all the way and find the equation of this line. Okay, on this problem, I went ahead and found the slope. I went up 1 and to the left 2, and that's 1 over -2. I know that also my line is going downward, so my slope is negative. And I went ahead and I brought the negative sign up because it looks cleaner to have a negative on the top of your fraction. And then, of course, you could see that the y-intercept is at -3. It's not at +3 up here. So the line crosses the y-axis at -3, which makes b equal to -3. Okay, great. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and substitute -1/2 in for the slope. So y is equal to -1/2, just keep the green color, and times x plus -3 is the y-intercept. So I'm substituting -3 in for b and -1/2 in for slope. Well, here I have 2 signs, which is not great to have. So what we're going to do is just change it to 1 sign. And we know that plus negative means the same thing as -3. Okay, because if I were to change this back, I could do add a line, change a sign, it will be that. So whenever you can, do that to make it look nice and clean in terms of the equation. Now I know that our equation originally has a plus b there, which is fine, but whenever you do come up with a final answer and you have two signs, go ahead and change it to one sign, which is a negative in this case, and you're good to go. Of course, also recognize that in the future we'll be doing problems like this, where if you have a negative in front of a number, that number is negative. So that's important to see as well. So y is equal to negative 1/2 x minus 3 is your final answer with that. And the final graph for today's lesson is this one, where the line will be crossing negative, so it's 0, negative 4. Once again, where your x is 0, the y is your y-intercept. So here we can see what our y-intercept is very clearly. The other point that you want to plot for this graph is 3, negative 2. And then you can connect your dots and solve for your slope and the y-intercept and your equation. Y is equal to mx plus b. Go ahead and do that, and we'll come back to the answer. Okay, so once again, we need to identify our slope and the y-intercept, and we do that by looking at where the line crosses the y-axis, and that is at negative 4, so that is the y-intercept here. And the slope is from this point on the y-axis, and I'm going to go up 2 and to the right 3, which is the other point that I have here in my graph, and that gives me 2/3. And we're going to go ahead and substitute 2/3 in for the slope and negative 4 in for the y-intercept. And at the end, as you can see, just like the other equation that we had previously on question number 4, we have two signs here. So in order to make this look cleaner, we'll just change the plus negative to just minus, and we're good to go. So final answer here is y is equal to 2/3 x minus